Welcome, lovely chosen ones. Some of the worst betrayals in your life were never accidental. They were intercepted catastrophes. The chosen one. When God rescues you, He does not just take you out of the fire. He reveals who set the fires. And this time, the conspiracy against you was not tiny, insignificant, or emotional. It was calculated. It was organized. It was horrible. And it was evil enough to create a villain in a Netflix thriller, say. Yes, it is too far before you even notice the risk. Heaven has already begun a rescue operation on your behalf. Not because you were weak, but because what was heading your way was not designed to be overcome just by human might. The assault was not physical. It was psychological, spiritual, and intentionally geared to harm the parts of you that they couldn't reach openly. The type of storyline that works softly. No evidence, no noise. The kind of storyline that kills the soul before the body even recognizes what has occurred. Here's a fact. Neuroscientists discovered that the human brain responds to emotional betrayal with the same intensity as physical agony. The same locations light up, indicating that their plans for you included more than simply drama and strife. It was a deliberate attack on your neurological system, identity, tranquility, and feeling of security. They didn't only want to harm you. They were orchestrating a collapse. Yet look at you. Still standing, still rising, still breathing as if you hadn't just escaped an emotional bomb wrapped in a grin. The fact is that God did not allow you to learn the scheme after it occurred. He made certain you detected its stench before it touched you. Because this one was not intended to shatter your heart. It was intended to bury your spirit. Of course, like every evil person in the Bible, they overlooked the passage in which God sees the midnight meeting before it occurs. He hears whispers in rooms you've never visited. He rewrites the finale while your adversaries are still practicing the first scene. The funny thing is, they felt they were quite brilliant. They believed they were subtle. They believed they were working beneath the radar. Meanwhile, God looked at their plan and said, "Oh, look at this creativity." Unfortunately, it expires today, so settle in. Because what God delivered you from wasn't just bad. It was cruelly dumb to assume it would ever work. And now we're delving into the whole scope of what was planned behind your back, as well as how God intervened before any of it could affect your fate. Number 1, they plotted a wound, but God revealed their intentions before the sword reached you. Some folks didn't merely mean to injure you. They were planning to inflict such severe harm on you that you would struggle to recover. This was not ordinary treachery or jealousy. This was a wound they sought to inflict on the part of you that holds your confidence, trust, and identity. They wanted the version of you that keeps everything together. And the reality is they relied on. You don't see it coming. They relied on your generosity, loyalty, empathy, and belief that others intend good. They sought to use your finest characteristics as a weapon to harm you, but God refused to let that before anything could touch you. God revealed their purpose rather than their words. He did not wait for the strike to land. He allowed you to experience a change in their presence, a peculiar uneasiness, or a sudden clarity that didn't make sense on the surface. You weren't given the whole story, but you were given enough to take a step back, to stop believing blindly and to detach yourself before the harm occurred. The point of no return. The beauty of God's protection is that it is subtle. It simply moves. It conceals, it discloses. It drives you away from seemingly innocuous doorways. And although you were perplexed as to why someone's energy suddenly seemed dangerous, God was merely completing the rescue effort that began long before you recognized anything was amiss. The scheme against you needed accuracy. It required precise timing. It required you to be ignorant. And that's precisely why it failed. God stopped this tactic before it had an effect. He let their facade drop. He let their attitude deteriorate. He forced them to talk too much or reveal too little. And when you saw the misalignment, their whole weapon came apart. They designed a wound that would have made you doubt yourself for years. God revealed it before it could break the skin. That's why you're here now with strength they can't understand, because the harm they created never had a chance to become your reality. Number 2, God allowed you to perceive the danger. You were not expected to see. There are times in your life when something just seems weird. Even though nothing evident has occurred, you are unable to explain it. You cannot provide evidence or collect data. All you know is that your soul begins to reject what your head continues to accept. That immediate ache, heaviness, and inward warning was not coincidental. It was God sending you early warning of danger you were never expected to discern on your own. The persons scheming against you were sophisticated enough to conceal their deeds, but not their spiritual intentions. And God permitted your inner senses to detect what their actions attempted to hide. You were expected to fall into their trap, unprepared, trusting, and emotionally vulnerable. They needed you unprotected. They required you in a situation where your clarity was poor and your connection was strong. But God wouldn't let it happen. So He heightened your awareness long before the scenario became clear. Suddenly talks seemed different. That tone did not set well. The manner they reacted did not reflect their statements. Something minor, easily overlooked, began to disturb you severely. You sensed the shift before their behaviors changed. That is not paranoia. That is spiritual protection. God did not provide you with any proof. He provided you sensations. He did not offer you a reason. He gave you honor. You weren't meant to notice the plot since it was intended to strike you from angles that your natural sight couldn't discern. But your soul felt the vibe of their goal. And as soon as that occurred, their whole strategy crumbled. When you feel danger, you adjust your movements. You became less accessible. You grew less open. You stopped giving out emotional access. And that little change, that inner signal, prevented them from accessing the version of you they needed to hack. God allowed you to feel what you couldn't see so that you wouldn't fall into what they were planning. That feeling of discomfort was not a weakness. It was a warning. And it is because of that warning that you were able to avoid a calamity that was supposed to strike silently and gradually. Number 3, their strategy required you to be fatigued. God restored you while you should have been weakened. The folks who conspired against you didn't expect your collapse to come from a large, spectacular event. They wanted you to wear down quietly. They required you to be fatigued, cognitively drained, emotionally exhausted, and spiritually stretched. Exhaustion reduces your alertness and confidence, making you more prone to accept things you might ordinarily question. Their scheme relied on your exhaustion as a tactic. They waited for you to become overloaded, overwhelmed, and distracted so that they could launch their assault without opposition. But just when life should have taken your battle away, something unexpected occurred. Strength sprang from nowhere. You gained vigor at a time when everything in your life said you should shut down. Despite the chaos that was going on around you, peace seeped in. You discovered clarity on days when uncertainty should have prevailed. You got up with resolve in the mornings when you had no reason to. That was no coincidence. That was God interrupting the script. God didn't just stop you from falling. He prevented them from estimating you. They examined the version of you that cracks under pressure. But they didn't anticipate the version of you that emerges from it. They didn't anticipate the sudden mental clarity that allowed you to see through their actions. They didn't anticipate you to start regaining vitality. They didn't expect you to get a second wind. Your repair did not make sense to them. They couldn't understand how you kept going, stayed steady, and remained anchored. They were monitoring you, waiting for you to collapse mentally or emotionally so that their plan could be implemented. But God restored your strength just as weakness was meant to let them in. Their calculations failed because God interfered. Instead of being too weary to defend yourself, too sleepy to think clearly or overpower, to recognize red flags, you became sharper, calmer, and stronger. And that shift wrecked all they had planned. They needed you fatigued. God made sure that you were powerful. As a result, the strategy that relied on your vulnerability was doomed to fail. Number 4, God denied them access before they could use your weakness. The folks who planned to hurt you were not interested in your accomplishments or outward confidence. They were aiming for the part of you that only a few people ever get to know, your inner trust, compassion, and vulnerability. They required the version of you that does not overthink, takes risks, forgives easily, and believes the best. Their whole approach was based on getting near enough to your unprotected side, since there is where the harm would be the most severe and long-lasting. But just as they were ready to slide into that vulnerable region, God intervened and severed the link. And He did it in a manner that first made no sense. The unexpected distancing may have left you feeling confused, upset, or rejected. You may have questioned why interactions stalled. Why did energy shift? Why did opportunities disappear? Or why did you suddenly feel disconnected from someone you formerly cared about? However, it was not at random. It was heavenly surgery. Before illness spreads, ensure a clean, exact removal. God saw the purpose. They hid behind friendliness. He saw the trickery. They covered up with worry. He noticed the jealousy. They pretended to be supportive. And He made certain that their access was restricted before they reached the most vulnerable portion of you. It seemed like a relationship was ending. A door shutting, a misunderstanding, or an unexpected emotional separation. But God saw it as a rescue. This disturbance rescued you from further treachery. The sort that leaves hidden wounds and causes you to doubt your value, intuition, and capacity to trust again. The sort that not only breaks your heart but also alters your identity. And God was not going to let it. So He cut off communication. He created distance. He revealed motivations. He dispelled the delusion. He made your soul uneasy in their presence. And by the time they noticed their access was eroding, it was already vanished. They never reached your vulnerable side. They never got to the point where they could change your thoughts or manipulate your emotions. God intervened, filtered them out, and safeguarded the part of you that was never supposed to be affected by their intents in the first place. Number 5. The trap failed because God disrupted their cooperation. The folks who banded together against you thought they were working as a well-organized team. They believed their communication was clear, their timing was impeccable, and their strategy was fail-safe. They were confident because they felt that unity meant success. What they didn't comprehend was that God may shut down a whole business without raising a voice or making a single indication. And this is precisely what occurred. When God intervened, their coordination started to fail. Messages were not comprehended properly. Instructions become distorted. Someone changed their mind at the last moment. Someone developed cold feet. Instead of working together, they began to distrust each other, questioning each other's intentions and silently debating whether the idea was worth the risk. People who were formerly assertive and outspoken behind closed doors become apprehensive and uncertain. They didn't see the invisible hand upsetting everything because they believed the disruption was emanating from inside their group, not from above. When God scrambles communication, misunderstanding becomes normal. It seems to be a coincidence, a human mistake, or a sudden dread. However, none of this is accidental. There are fractured lines because God has withdrawn the agreement from their midst. The unity they believed they had was actually kept together by bad purpose, which God broke down from inside. He didn't deliver their words appropriately. He didn't let their instructions match. He didn't give them enough time to maintain their confidence before moving on. When coordination fails, the plan dies with it. Some began blaming each other. Some began to feel guilty. Some began to worry about the repercussions. Others saw they were being exploited and discreetly pulled away. One weak connection became 2. 2 became 5. And then the whole building fell before it could reach you. They could not comprehend why. Nothing went well anymore. What? Every stride seemed obstructed. What? Everything they had planned fell through. They had no idea God was ruining their plan from the ground up until it was almost time for execution. Their trap did not fail due of your strength. It failed because heaven disrupted their union. The coordination required to damage you was swallowed up in chaos. And as uncertainty entered the room, their whole plan crumbled right in their hands. 6th, God permitted you to feel just enough anguish to see the extent of evil you were up against. There are times in life when the suffering you experience was not intended to shatter you. It was intended to disclose the truth. God did not let you be touched so that you may suffer. He created just enough pain to demonstrate the character of the individuals you were dealing with. If He had protected you from every sting, you would still have shown allegiance to those who were sharpening blades behind your back. You would have continued going with folks who regarded you as a target rather than a comrade. You wanted a glance into their depths. Not to traumatize you but to show you the true danger you were in. That discomfort was not punishment. It was information. God used that little breach in your heart to reveal a giant crack in their character. The disappointment, treachery, contempt, and switch up. Everything functioned as a warning flag. It revealed what they were capable of, how far they were ready to go, and how little they cared about your safety. You sensed the initial step of their goal, but God intervened in the subsequent phases. He allowed you to feel the sting but not the knife. He allowed you to observe the red signal but not experience the collapse they intended. Pain is often the only language that discloses the truth after words and deeds have deceived you. The suffering made you smarter. It sharpened you. It awakened a level of insight that comfort could never provide. It showed you that some individuals aren't only negative. They carry agendas. It taught you not to assume everyone has a nice heart. It taught you that evil may smile, counsel, embrace, and claim that a little period of anguish was God's spotlight, exposing the depth of their plans before the harm was irrevocable. Because you felt the first warning blow, you took a step back. You paid attention. You stopped defending those who hoped you would remain blind. You discovered their patterns, methods, and genuine spirit. Pain did not destroy you because it was not intended to do so. It rescued you by revealing what would have destroyed you if you had remained oblivious. God gave just enough pain to avert a lifetime of suffering. And this is why you continue to stand with clarity rather than brokenness. Number 7. Their plan needed you to remain quiet. God increased your consciousness. Instead, those working against you never intended for a big, messy showdown. Their method relied on your quiet, the type that comes from feeling overwhelmed, confused, and emotionally constrained. They wanted you to stay in your thoughts, doubting yourself, rehashing talks, questioning your own instincts, and lowering your voice. They wanted you to remain secluded in your own thoughts so that their influence could do its harm without being questioned. Silence was their ideal setting since a calm mind is simpler to manage than an attentive one. However, God did not allow you to fall into that mental trap just when they anticipated confusion would obscure your judgment. God increased your consciousness. Moments that were trivial began to make sense, and conduct that you had previously overlooked became obvious as day. The same justifications that had formerly comforted you now seemed questionable. You started seeing tones, attitudes, energy changes, and discrepancies that you would have missed without divine vision. Your mind didn't shut off. It was awakening. Their strategy broke apart the minute your awareness grew. You were not expected to connect the dots. You were not supposed to look through the gaps. You were not supposed to question their motives. In reality, they were depending on you being too emotionally attached and cognitively preoccupied to see the patterns they were concealing. But God started to emphasize warning signs you had previously overlooked. He amplified truths. They attempted camouflage. The sudden clarity you felt was not coincidental. That was nirvana bursting through the mental fog. They needed to trap you. The insight that God gave you became your escape. It ended the spell of bewilderment. It transformed you from emotionally susceptible to spiritually sensitive. And as soon as your eyes opened, their whole scheme collapsed. They couldn't manipulate someone who had finally figured out their rhythm. They couldn't mislead someone who recognized their technique. They couldn't corner someone whose thinking expanded beyond their strategy. They needed you to be quiet. God created you observant. And the instant your knowledge grew, their hold over you faded. What was intended to be swallowed, you become what you walked out of. Because clarity always defeats trickery. And God made certain you have more than enough to go away unscathed. Number 8, God stopped the person they intended to employ as the last blow. Every narrative has a central character who is picked to administer the blow that will hurt the most, cut the deepest, and make you doubt everything you have ever thought about humans. This person was not selected at random. They were chosen because they had the appropriate access, influence, or emotional connection to you. They were the only ones who could approach and attack without arousing suspicion. The enemy had counted on this person to be the final move, the finishing touch, the attack that would bring the entire plan together. But God intervened and silently interrupted everything. He did not dispute with them. He didn't divulge the complete strategy in front of everyone. He just touched the heart, conscience, or terror of the person they were relying on. Suddenly, the person they trusted most turned untrustworthy. The individual who was supposed to administer the fatal blow began withdrawing without explanation. Their drive was reduced and their confidence had crumbled. When it came time to act, they lost their bravery from the group debate. Something within them refused to go on. And that something was God. It may have been panic emerging from nowhere. It's possible that they couldn't shake their guilt. It's possible that a rapid shift in circumstances rendered involvement unsafe. It may have been a peculiar feeling of uneasiness. They couldn't explain. Whatever it was, the adversary did not expect it. The whole narrative rested on this one person participating completely. And when God intervened, the whole scheme fell apart. The chain's strongest link becomes its weakest. The important player became the missing link. The last strike failed because the individual designated to deliver it lacked the capacity, motivation, or bravery to carry it out. They may never acknowledge it, but something had stopped them. Something warned them. Something drove them backward. That something was divine intervention. God did not just prevent the onslaught. He thwarted the assailant's willingness. And it is why you are standing now in peace rather than disaster. Because the hit was intended to complete, you never got off the ground. Number 9, God transformed their confidence into clumsiness just when they believed they had you. Your adversaries were not acting from strength. They were functioning with arrogance. They thought they had you all figured out, properly imprisoned, and perfectly positioned for the demise they were hoping for. Their confidence got so strong that they ceased disguising their intentions. They ceased being cautious. They ceased being calculated. They began celebrating too early, and the early jubilation became the fracture. God used to undo all they planned. Arrogance makes people careless, which is precisely what occurred. Instead of moving silently, they became louder. Instead of being strategic, they become impulsive. Instead than following their footsteps, they began stumbling over their own acts. They rushed. They became messy. They neglected to hide their traces. They made mistakes throughout their chats. The tone altered. Their mask loosened. They exposed too much, and they didn't realize it since they already thought you were vanquished. But God was arranging each error at the same time. They believed they were ascending. God was loosening their hold. You began to pick up on indications that they had not intended to give you. You identified discrepancies they didn't consider important. Their lives were no longer aligned. Their faces showed their true intents. Their vitality is revealed. Their secret motivations. God made their pride so weighty that it dragged down their plan right in front of you. They weren't intended to make themselves that obvious, but they did. They weren't expected to make errors, but they continued to make them. They were not intended to be seen. However, God took the obscurity from their plans. When pride takes control, accuracy fades. When precision fails, plans disintegrate. God let their confidence descend to recklessness so you might see what they were concealing. Avoid the trap and go away unharmed. They stumbled on their own ego. They failed because they were too confident in their achievement. They underestimated you, but much more so, they misjudged the God who was protecting you. Their demise started at the same time they celebrated yours. And while they were busy arranging for your demise, God was planning their exposure. Their hubris was their doom long before they got near enough to undo you. Number 10. God made you emotionally distant just when you were meant to be attached. Your enemy's whole approach was based on one item. You are emotionally available. They didn't go after your thoughts first. They wanted to know how you felt. Because once someone has your feelings, they do not need modification. They don't require proof. They do not need physical control. All they need is access to the part of you that cares too much, forgives too much, or hopes too passionately. But just when they anticipated you to be the most devoted, something in you shut down. Not gradually, instantly. Not because you were exhausted. Because you were protected. You awoke one day and the emotional tug had vanished. The caring vanished. The craving faded. The connection snapped off like a dead branch. What they believed was a permanent hook in your heart quickly loosened its grasp. That was not self-defense. That was not a trauma reaction. It was divine intervention. God cut the emotional umbilical connection because he knew they were going to use it as a weapon. They were depending on your sympathy for guilt. Your dedication to trapping you. Your love might blind you. Your dread may silence you. Your aim is to keep you stuck. And just as they were about to make their boldest move against you, God switched a switch inside. He depleted the emotional gasoline that drove their deception. Their insults no longer cut through their praise or have an impact on their lives. I did not destabilize you. Their absence did not disturb you. Their presence did not impress you. They were bewildered, astonished, and outraged, even though the version of you on which they based their strategy no longer existed. Your estrangement became their greatest setback. Your emotional neutrality became a spiritual checkmate. Your heart's coldness toward them was really God maintaining the temperature warm enough for your destiny yet freezing enough to prevent them entrance. They couldn't weaponize a heart they no longer had. They could not control a soul. God disconnected from their system. They couldn't fool someone whose emotional energy had already been redirected toward heavenly purposes. And it is the true menace. They lost control of you without you saying anything, without a confrontation, and without a struggle. That subtle shift was God breaching the deal they had written in secret number. The narrative required uncertainty, but God provided you with unexpected, unexplained clarity. Your foes were not attempting to physically destroy you first. They were attempting to psychologically disorient you. Confusion serves as the entrance to control. If they could confuse your judgment, distort your perspective, and obscure your intuition, everything else would fall into place. Their strategy needed you to be logically confused, emotionally disoriented, and spiritually uncertain. They required you to question yourself. They needed you to lose your footing. They required you to view truth as assault and falsehoods as comfort. They wanted your mind to be a labyrinth they created, with them waiting at the exit and you pleading for help. But just when they believed they had properly confused your inner impulses, something miraculous occurred. Clarity poured over you like a light bursting through a locked door. You did not seek it. You did not study for it. You did not piece it together. It struck you. It awoke you. It removed the veil instantly. That sudden clarity was not intellectual. It was an intervention. You weren't the one analyzing. It was God revealing. You perceived motivations without evidence. You understood patterns without explanation. You joined dots that were not revealed to you. You realized the risk without being warned. Despite never having been taught the game, you can recognize the chessboard. This was not paranoia. It was not overthinking. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a spiritual illumination sent at the exact moment. Confusion was meant to devour you. The truth emerged before the light could settle. The revelation came before the trap could be closed. Clarity came before your adversaries could rejoice. God did not give you clarity so that you could become smart. He gave you clarity, making you untouchable. Clarity became your shield, your compass, your escape path, and your safety all at once. Your adversaries don't comprehend how you simply knew. They believe someone has exposed them. They believe you heard something. They believe you have a physical source. They will never realize that your lucidity was not horizontal. It was vertical. You did not learn the truth. Heaven delivered it. A number. God preserved your reputation before they could pollute a place you hadn't even visited. Your adversaries weren't only after who you were in the moment. They were aiming for a version of you that hadn't yet appeared. The true threat was not the chatter that circulated in the locations you already inhabited. It was the poison that they planned to inject into the rooms. You hadn't entered the circles you hadn't joined, and you had no idea what chances were waiting for you. Their plan did not cause short-term harm. It was long-term sabotage. They intended to sow seeds of doubt in your future so that you would arrive in areas already tainted with erroneous notions. But God thwarted the whole scheme before a single falsehood could be said. He briefly stopped some doors, not to deny you but to deny the rumor. Access talks that were designed to turn others against you suddenly seemed odd, and those listening felt an unexplained unease. Hearts that were meant to be influenced remained untouched. Minds that were meant to be affected remained curiously guarded. It wasn't because these individuals were smart. It was because God instilled a divine barrier inside them, rendering them incapable of absorbing anything negative associated with your name. There were sessions in which your detractors attempted to cast doubt on you, but the environment changed. Their statements lacked punch. Their tales did not stick. The falsehoods did not travel because heaven turned off the ventilation system. They attempted to let them pass. And you continued on your way, completely unconscious that God had gone ahead of you, sweeping the road clear before your feet ever touched it. Your reputation was protected not because others supported you, but because God never permitted the assault to reach the areas where your benefits were waiting. He prevented pollution from reaching your destination. He muffled whispers before they left. He preserved your name in areas your body hadn't even reached yet. That's why when you eventually enter some rooms, you'll feel strangely welcomed. You will get favors that are inconsistent with your previous interactions with such folks. You will discover opportunities. Does it seem to open? Is it too smooth? To be ready? Because God did not only safeguard you in the moment. He protected your future by thwarting that scheme in advance. A number. God withheld what you desired because it would have left you vulnerable to their scheme. There are times in life when you look back and thank God for every closed door that previously made you feel disregarded, forgotten, or ignored. At the time, the weight seemed harsh. It seemed unjust. You puzzled why something so appealing kept sliding out of grasp. You wondered why your prayers weren't being answered and why life seemed to move more slowly for you than for others. But heaven was not undermining you. Heaven was protecting you. God saw something you couldn't. He understood that the same item you were pleading for had a secret tunnel that led directly into the trap your adversaries were constructing. That job you believed would alter everything would have put you under someone's thumb who secretly despised your ability. That connection you hoped for would have bound your heart to someone who openly appreciated you but intended to drain you secretly. That exciting move would have put you in the path of those looking to take advantage of your compassion, trust, or weakness. You were not refused. You were redirected. The delay was not punishment. It was an interception. God caused uncertainty around your intentions, delayed the process, or let things go apart just enough to save you from walking straight into danger masquerading as opportunity. And although you were irritated, heaven was relieved because one false yes, one hasty choice, or one badly timed blessing might have made you readily available to those who had already planned to shatter you. God was not late. He was strategic. Your delay was heaven's way of severing the bridge. Your adversaries were advancing at you. God intervened, preventing an ambush. And the disappointment you felt was not indicative of desertion. It was a clue that something was planned for you, but you couldn't see the jagged edges. Now, when the true blessing arrives, you will note that it is free of turmoil, confusion, hidden intentions, and spiritual liabilities. God did not just give you what you desired. He ensured that it could not be used to hurt you. Your delay was divine protection disguised. A number. The narrative needed that you be average, yet God activated a version of yourself. They couldn't forecast your foes and didn't prepare for your growth. They prepared for your history. Everything they planned hinged on you staying the older version of yourself. The one who put up with rubbish, trusted false promises, ignored red signs, and thought others shared your beliefs. Their whole plan was based on the premise that you would remain innocent, soft-spoken, emotionally open, and readily swayed. They relied on the version of you that didn't recognize your value, questioned your instincts, and apologized for things you didn't do. But God changed your identity before they could carry out the plot. Right. When they believed they knew how to contact you. God changed the locks, correct? When people believed you were predictable, God instilled in you a deeper intellect, greater discernment, a harder spine, a calmer spirit, and a closer connection to truth. Suddenly, the person they believed they were dealing with disappeared. The emotional buttons they intended to press did not react. They planned to exploit the weaknesses. No longer in operation. They practiced your version. Attacking was gone, replaced with a version fashioned by knowledge rather than wounds. This was more than simply growth. It was activation. God did not merely help you mature. He disconnected you from who you used to be and connected you to who you were meant to become. You developed the ability to perceive intentions before they are uttered. Someone who finds patterns that others miss. Someone who doesn't jeopardize peace. Someone enters a room with spiritual awareness rather than emotional desire. Someone who can no longer be persuaded by flattery, guilt, or pressure. Your adversaries were not surprised that you fought back. They were surprised by your transformation. You become trackable after becoming unrecognizable. The blueprint they previously had became worthless. Their previous projections became wrong. They lost their confidence and became silly. They did not anticipate a heavenly makeover. They did not anticipate a spiritual uplift. They did not anticipate God to completely redesign the operating system. They planned for who you were, but God enabled who you would become. And that transition alone shattered their plans. Every detail we've examined today indicates one unmistakable reality. You were never alone in the middle of their plans. Every scheme, whisper, and covert plan designed to break you, distract you, or derail your destiny was foiled before it reached the heart of who you are. God didn't just protect you. He organized your survival, increased your consciousness, protected your reputation, and transformed you into a version of yourself they could never have predicted. He did not wait for you to stumble or face your battles alone. He interfered deliberately, calmly, and precisely, converting every trap into a lesson, every effort at harm into evidence of your divine favor, and every impediment into confirmation of your inevitable destiny. What they meant was to do damage. God has changed into your protection and platform. Moments that should have shattered you instead triggered your power. People who attempted to influence your emotions found nothing to exploit since God created you emotionally impregnable. Situations intended to confound you became chances for clarity and discernment, and plots to keep you ordinary were met with a God-infused update that made you unrecognizable, untouchable, and invisible. Stoppable. This isn't just about surviving. This is divine plan in operation. This is God's invisible hand, quicker, wiser, and more powerful than any opponent or conspiracy. It demonstrates that your route is safe, your name is upheld, and your future is sacrosanct. The adversaries you believed were brilliant never saw the unseen, comprehended the spiritual plan, or recognized God's timetable for your triumph. Remember this? Every closed door, delay, heartache, and revelation was part of a divine plan to shield you from the unknown and prepare you for the life you were born to live. Your protection is not arbitrary. Your clarity, power, and growth are all evidence of a God who recognizes who He is and intervenes before the adversary can take a step. If this message speaks to you, be sure to remain engaged. Subscribe to the channel to get more great insights such as this video if it resonates with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear the truth and leave a comment below. Share your own experiences with God's protection in your life. Let us continue to develop, learn, and see divine intervention together, since your narrative is only beginning and your destiny cannot be changed. God bless you.